school year, and a request for approval of settlement agreement and general release between WSD and parents and students for the 2021-2022 school year. Item B, approval of compromise and release agreement between WSD and parents and students for the 2021-2022 school year again. C, approval of settlement agreement and general release between Washington Unified School District and parents and students for the 2021-2022 school year. Item 2, Government Code Section 54957, Public Employee Superintendent. And item number 3, Government Code Section 54957.6, Conference with Labor Negotiators, WSTA, Csea, and Management. And I'm going to move on to, I did not see any public comments for closed session. And is that right, Mario?
Correct. No public comments received.
Okay. With that, we will go into closed session, and our ETA to come out of closed session is 6:30 p.m. Thank you so much.
Stephanie, can you hear me? Or can somebody see if they can hear me while they're in closed session? We're having mic issues.
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, I'm gonna sit where a trustee would sit because they couldn't hear her.
Can you hear me now?
Just barely. You're very quiet.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Louis.
We are reconvening an open session for the regularly scheduled school board meeting on June 9th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. I am looking for somebody to do a Pledge of Allegiance. And I believe I will ask Miss Monique Stovall, who is in the room at the location, to lead us in the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America
and
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and justice for all.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm choking on a French fry. In any case, we are going to do roll call. And so just as a point of order, because we are doing a hybrid tonight, we'll have to do every vote as a roll call. So Trustee Pizzotti,
Here.
Trustee Barnes,
Present.
Clerk Venegas,
Present.
and I am present as well. Is Vice President Kirby Gonzalez anywhere in the room?
Nope.
Okay, she will be joining us a little bit later. Announcements of actions taken in closed session. Government Code Section 54956.9 D2, pending or potential litigation. A, B, and C, information received. Action will be taken later today in the agenda. Government Code Section 54957, Public Employee Superintendent, was not discussed, process was discussed. Government Code Section 54957.6, Conference with Labor Negotiators, WSTA, Csea, and Management, information received. I am going to move on to approval of the agenda, and I understand, turn over to Dr. Hildreth, you have a request.
Yes, thank you, President Wong. I would like to move our action item. Let me make sure I give the right number for the minutes. I would like to move our action item P4, approval of the Washington Unified School District Strategic Plan. I would like to move that to an information discussion item. We want to make sure that we give trustees and the public time to see the document, and if there's any questions or suggestions for modifications, moving it to an information item will allow us to make any needed changes. And then we would like to bring that back to the board at our next meeting with a request for approval. So again, my request is to move it to an information item and then move the information item after L, public comments, since we will have a guest from Performance Fact to join and share the document, just wanting to be honoring his time. So if the board is in agreement to move that to information item to after L, public comments, that is the request.
I am good with that. Are there any other requests for amendments to the agenda item tonight?
Nope.
Seeing there are none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
I move.
I
Clerk
second.
Venegas moves, Trustee Barnes seconds, roll call vote, Trustee Pizzotti?
Aye.
I vote aye. Trustee Barnes?
Aye.
Clerk Venegas?
Aye.
The agenda is adopted as amended. So moving on to item J, communication celebrations, we have none. Yay, end of school, everybody had graduation, yay. I am going to then move on to association reports. The first is WSTA report. Do we have President Knapp on the, or somebody from WSTA?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay. And I don't see anybody in the room, Mario?
I left both reports on there for president's request in case they decided to have a report. Sorry.
Okay, so am I to hear? I'm sorry, it's hard to hear here. So the CSEA report is also not, it's President Gandara also not in the room, or?
Correct. I left them both agendized. I spoke with both union presidents prior to the publication of the agenda, and they specified to leave them on there in case they were to join.
Okay.
But if they're not here, we can deduce that they're not reporting out.
Okay. So seeing that there are no WSTA representatives, I'll move on to, are there any CSEA representatives for an update?
No, President Gandara let me know that he would not be able to join, and he had nothing to report this evening.
Okay, great. We're moving on to public comments. I do have one pre-submitted comment, but before then, I wanted to, is there anybody in the room?
No.
Seeing that there are none.
Somebody just raised their hand. I apologize for interrupting.
Okay, that's okay. Let me read this while that the person, the live comment will be read, will be admitted to making a comment after I read the statement. So public comment disclaimer, members of the public may address the board on the topics of our board agenda during every meeting. In addition, during regular meetings, the public may also address any comments, any topic within the jurisdiction of the board. Please know the board is listening to your comments, but by law cannot meaningfully respond in this forum to items not on the agenda. The board may limit the total time for public comment on any topic to 20 minutes unless it waives the item limit for any item. Individual speakers may be limited to 3 minutes to comment on any topic unless amended. The board respects the rights of members of the public to speak regarding matters within its jurisdiction. However, please recognize that comments regarding students other than the speaker's own children made during a public board meeting may be a violation of the student's right to privacy, and thus the speaker may be legally liable. If you reference a student's name other than your own student, you may be deemed out of order. Furthermore, it is important for the public to understand that negative or derogatory comments made against district employees or others, even those made in public comments, board policy allows the public to lodge complaints against district employees, providing more opportunity to be heard than is allowed under the open meeting law that governs the meeting. I'd also like to, before I open it up to the live public comment, provide a virtual land acknowledgement, if you would so please. We acknowledge that this hybrid meeting is taking place throughout the unceded territory of California, home to nearly 200 tribal nations. As we begin this event, we acknowledge and honor the original inhabitants of our various regions. A land acknowledgement is a critical step towards working with Native communities to secure meaningful partnership and inclusion in the stewardship and protection of their cultural resources and homelands. Let's take a moment to honor these ancestral grounds that we are collectively gathered upon and support the resilience and strength that all Indigenous people have shown worldwide. I am currently taking this meeting on land that is the traditional unceded territory of the Tongva Nation. So thank you for that. And then moving on to the live public comment, because Mario, I am told nobody's in the room.
Correct. Nobody's present in the room. Nobody's present in the room, but there's a raised hand, last name Chuckis. I have allowed you the ability to speak, and you may unmute yourself and begin.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Don't talk with your.
Thank you for your time. I'm addressing a observation I made. As you're well aware, the Measure Z $150 million bond has been dispersed, and not new news to anybody there that 47 million will go to Westfield modernization, 61 million will go to Elkhorn modernization, Another 60 will go to the Performing Arts Center. And program costs to do those things is another 9 million, which tallies up to $177 million. So they spent the $150 million bond you have spent, and $27 million will have to be found. I, as a lot of people over the last week, were shocked by what was happening around the country. And I look back at the bond and the way it was written. And in campus equity, I found, which I recalled, the goal and purpose was the following. Many sites, particularly K-8 sites, need improvement in order to achieve functional and operation equity across the district. And underneath that reads the following as one of those items to be addressed. Provide enhanced school security and safety measures, including exterior security cameras, security communications, door security upgrades, fencing, and fire alarms. We spent every nickel on those three items I just discussed. And we are not going to spend a single dollar out of the $150 million bond now, as stipulated or stated to the public when the bond was released. To me, that is just shocking. And it's just, you know, in today's dates and times, you could say that the money might come, oh, we'll get it from the state or the federal government later, or we'll do that. But at the end of the day, the bond was sent out by the board and the words are clear. Now, it does state under the equity, this measure will provide needed improvements for the oldest schools. And that one line item apparently was enough to select the two schools. And oh, by the way, the Performing Arts Center also was included under the VAPA area to be considered.
I apologize for interrupting, Mr. Shukis. 3 minutes are up.
Excuse me, I didn't understand.
I believe your time is up, Mr. Shukis. Thank you for your time. I also wanted to clarify, take this moment, and Assistant Superintendent Stovall, I just wanted to confirm our understanding in the past, we've actually voted on measures during the COVID dollars to actually make some improvements like security cameras and the like. Is she there?
You're correct.
Okay, so I think there, just as a point of just transparency for the public, that even though the bond is going for certain things, we have taken other measures using COVID dollars for security cameras and other safety things. So I am going to move on to are there any other live comments?
No other live.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the written comment from Ms. Jolie Terrazas, speaking as a community member. Hello, I've just finished up my first year as a first grade teacher in the district. I wanted to share the following. Here at Riverbank, we are the otters, ! We are proud and want to be sure that you're aware of some things you ought to know. Mom joke, I really appreciated that. Our third grade teacher, Tiffany Keller, was recognized for providing outstanding service to children with special needs in Yolo County by the Yolo County Special Education Local Plan Area, also known as a SELPA, Community Advisory Committee, ! Yay. Juliet Patrick, 6th grade English teacher, Riverbank, was honored as Secondary Teacher of the Year. And our principal, Kristen Rodriguez, was recognized for individual and program of excellence. Finally, thanks to efforts led by our teacher, Gwyneth Brandon, we are making beautiful progress in our garden. Go Riverbank Otters. There's many other wonderful things going on, but time is limited. Lastly, I wanted to put in a plug for reducing class sizes. My first grade class size could potentially go up to 26. When working with children, and especially children who have experienced trauma, relationship building and the time and effort that it takes are crucial. I'd like for us all to engage in a dialogue and look at evidence-based practices that may include reducing class size. Thanks for your attention and have a great one. Okay, that is That's it for the written comments, and we are going to move on to the agenda item. The next agenda item we moved up is to information. Sorry, I had to read it. For discussion and information is the Washington Unified School District Strategic Plan 2022 to 2027. Dr. Hildreth, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, President Wong and board members. I am very excited to share this information with you this evening, and I am joined by our collaborator throughout this year, Mutiu Fagbayi, the president and CEO of Performance Fact, who has worked with our community really over the last 7 months or so to create a strategic plan that really will be our guide for the next 5 years. But before we get into what's the new plan, I did want to go over a bit of what our original plan was back in started in 2016, or I should say the process began in the 2015-16 school year. And so a little context for those of us who were not in the district or on the board during that time, it was back in February of 2016 that the board approved working with the Cambrian group to facilitate our district through a strategic plan process, which was from 2016 to 2021. And that process at that time really helped the district narrow our organizational focus on some deliverable goals and really strengthen our core beliefs and ensure that all of our students were going to graduate high school ready, enter college and career with the skills they needed. And it also was meant to really be a blueprint for success aligned to the Lcap. And so it was used as a really strong communication tool to help clearly define our goals, our vision, and our strategic plan. So at that time, the committee to create this, the original strategic plan met for about 2.5 days back in April of 2016. And the committee was comprised of about 30 members from our WUSD family, including the school board. We had district cabinet, administrators, teachers, classified community leaders, and high school students as well. And it was really reflecting on who we are, where we have been, and where we need to go. So I want to just highlight some of the things that were said then and share with you as we go through the updated strategic plan, how we have taken what was developed in 2016 and made sure that we used it as a bridge for what we have put in our new strategic plan. So Mario, if you could go to the next slide. So we really at that time focused on the beliefs. Again, the who are we of the district, and recognizing we understand how important education is in our community. We want everyone to thrive. We understand the need for ownership and responsibility from everyone in the organization. We want our students to feel empowered because that could increase their motivation, understood the uniqueness of all of our individuals in the district and the need to be valued and respected, having good choices for the community, and especially for staff, know that there's a balance of hard work and joy. And as I read these, it really helped me to see how that foundation of equity began in the district back in 2016. So our focus on equity and really looking at our beliefs is not something new. Next slide. So this is when the district came up with the group who worked on the strategic plan, came up with our mission, our gateway to extraordinary possibilities. And what you'll see in the strategic plan that we're presenting tonight, that this mission is really reflected in the equity principles or the equity statement that the board has developed over this year with our work during our governance sessions with Nicole Anderson and Associates. And we've created this equity statement. And as we look at it tonight, you will see that these highlights of engaging learning experience, highly qualified educators, a culture of innovation responsive to students, and the importance of family involvement and school community partnerships, that really is highlighted in our equity principles. Next slide. And so what the previous plan really highlighted is what are the things that we value for our students and wanting them to develop interest, wanting them to apply their knowledge and be responsible contributors to the community and finding joy. And so really you'll find when we talk about what we call a portrait of a graduate, that these strategic objectives from 2016 are still part of what we want for our students. Next slide. The previous plan also talked about strategies of what do we want to do to get to that piece of those beliefs and strategic objectives. And the importance here is really the focus on professional practice, collaboration, training for all educators, and unifying our community in culturally sensitive ways, and understanding the importance of valuing all of the students in our system. Next slide. And then lastly, the strategic plan really sets some foundations of how we want to make decisions, how we want to treat people, making sure our resources are aligned to the things we value. We want to always have integrity and accountability and keep that positive attitude and persevere and make sure we're bringing joy and hope. And so what we learned through this original strategic plan process was that it really again set that foundation. And what you'll see as we move into the presentation tonight is that we've incorporated what was in the previous strategic plan. What we've added to it is some key actions. So we want to make sure that this is a living document and that there's ways for us to measure if we are going to be hitting our goals. So being a little bit more specific and intentional about the work that we're doing over the next 5 years, and really using this as a launch for our roadmap to this comprehensive plan that we're presenting tonight. So with that, I would like to get us started in what the new plan looks like. So Mario, if you could pull that up, or I think Mutiu, you might have access to that slide. Okay.
Yes.
Please
Good evening,
share.
everyone. Thank you. It's nice to reconnect with you. I want to begin by thanking you on behalf of myself and my colleagues for trusting us with the process. We started in mid-November, and 7 months later, we're wrapping it up. We hope you'll be pleased with the final product. It actually came from your folks. We didn't get a bunch of folks, listen to them, went away in a dark room, then say, this is your plan. It was actually a co-construction at every step of the process. And I hope you'll see that in the process I'm going to describe and also in the products. Can you all hear me so far? Yes? Okay, great. So I'm going to, you should have access to 3 documents, but we're going to spend most of the time on what we call the overview. This is laid out in PowerPoint format. It's designed for presentation and getting additional feedback from stakeholders. When we're done, after it's gone through the entire review process, we'll produce, more of a bound, booklet type version. So this again is designed to just share the materials so that we can get feedback from you and everybody else. So I'm going to cover this in 2 phases. Up to slide 19 will be to just describe the structure and the framework we use for the planning process. And then under the plan, beginning on page 22, we'll go through some of the products. First, the process, and then the products. So this is the profile of our students in WUSD. About 9 out of every 20 students are Hispanic, Latinx. We all know this already. About 6 out of every 20 students are white. 3 out of every 20 students are Asian, and then 1 each Black or African American or multiracial. And there's less than 1% for the other ethnicities, American Indian, Native Alaskan, and so on. So what we have is what you know quite well, a very diverse district. There's another way of thinking about who our students are, and that's in terms of programs they might qualify for. About 65% of our students, or 13 out of every 20, come from homes that are classified by the government as low income. About 15% are learners of English, and roughly 11%, 2 out of every 20 students, are students who qualify for an IEP. That does not include 504. Okay. So what we set out to do.
Did you say that does not include 504?
It doesn't.
It doesn't. Okay.
So the charge that we were given was to assist the district in developing a strategic alignment plan. And that plan for us always starts by clarifying what we want for students, then going on to what we must do well to achieve those outcomes for students. That's what we call the roadmap. Do the planning in a way that really embraces the diversity of voices within the district. And then finally, at the end of the day, we have to have some folks who will make sure that things actually get followed up on. We call that leadership for courageous action. This first part is easier in many respects. The planning phase is not the real challenge. The real challenge is in the implementation phase. And that's where bullet number 4 really comes into play. Okay, so if we want our communities to be to trust in and be committed to the plan, we have to involve them in developing it. So that's the planning process. Then, in a real sense, it's about moving from misalignment to alignment. How do we align people, processes, program structure, all on the same page, going in the same direction? And to ensure that we organize the planning teams, the planning process around a series of teams. The central team, or called the core planning team, is the largest team, and it's also the team that has every stakeholder group represented. We have students, we have teachers, administrators, parents, board members, community leaders, and so on. Then we also have met with students several times, and also did a survey of all students in grades 3 through 12. There was another team that was mostly teachers and instructional staff. We call it the Instructional Focus Team. We held some community forums, that's a CF. And we also have an alignment team. I described the alignment team as the movers and shakers. It includes, for example, some of you on this meeting, folks who provide support to the students that we serve in WUSD, and even people like the chief of police was on the alignment team. And we've had at least 1 or 2 presentations with the board, and the one tonight being the prelude to formal approval of the plan. So by designing the planning process this way, we have multiple perspectives from different stakeholders, and we gave everyone a chance to participate in multiple ways. This is between November 15th and this tonight. We've held about 20 plus meetings. The core planning team met 8 times. The instruction focus team met 8 times. We met 3 times with students. We just lumped it all together in one. We met 3 or 4 times with the alignment team, and we had some community forums also. This gives you a feel for the series of meetings held. And we feel it's important to acknowledge those who participated, so their names, including yours, are also listed in the report. So that's it for context. I really want to emphasize this point about what you're going to see in terms of the products came from the stakeholders. They didn't come from anyone else from outside. And the reason for having so many different meetings is to allow WUSD folks to talk things through among themselves. And our role was to facilitate the conversation and to bring some experience and resources to the conversation also. So let's look at the planning process itself. We asked 4 basic questions. What data do we have? So every group saw that 50-page data booklet that included academic data, data about access for different students, and also the survey data. So that's part 1. What data do we have? What does the data say? Why does the data look that way? And then finally, in the red box, what are we going to do about it? So the plan, the recommendations is that last question. And that red box was addressed in 3 ways. Circle number 1 was getting clear about what we want for students. Circle number 2 is focused on instruction, because the most powerful magic in teaching and learning occurs at the intersection of student, teacher, and content. So for us, elevating the importance of effective instruction trumps everything else that we do as adults. So how do we really make sure that we have real magic for students every day when the student and the teacher and the content come together? That's what some people call the instructional core. Circle number 3 addresses what the rest of us have to do. So kids first, teachers are teaching second, and then the infrastructure to support teachers and teaching in order for us to get all kids home. So the rest of my presentation will be framed around these 3 circles. And before I leave this page, you can see on the far right what's covered under each one of them. Dr. Hildreth talked about the equity principle. It's the starting point for the work. Then what we call the promise is a combination of mission, vision, and core values. Then I'll share with you the portrait of a graduate that's evolved from the discussion, some specific goals and measures of student progress. So we're going to set some real targets that we will use to track our progress towards the promise we're making to ourselves and the community. Now, you will not see the performance targets or performance benchmarks tonight. Following formal approval by the board, the superintendent and her team, in consultation with the schools, will come back and talk about some specific targets. So that's the only thing that's not part of what we're going to share with you so far. And in circle number 2, we'll be talking about the foundation we're going to build. What are the building blocks of our house? We call those the four pillars. What are these practices that are essential for effective instruction? And then on circle number 3, we will spend time with you tonight on what we call the strategy map. The strategy map is how all stakeholders come together to support the district. I'm going to pause there. Any quick questions or anything you want me to clarify before we charge into the recommendations, please?
Any questions from, I can't. The trustees in the room are super tiny, so I can't. You're going to have to speak up if you have any questions.
I guess I'll go. I'm big on goals and measurements and why the presentation. So I would have been a fan of hearing that piece. But no, everything else, I believe you've done this presentation a couple of times. So some of it is a little bit repetitive, but we're definitely looking forward to the goals and outcomes.
Great. Yeah, we're going to get there. And the part about repetitiveness, that's by design. Same information we present in 2 or 3 different ways sometimes, and then ask the client to tell us which version they like. That's one reason why a few things are repeated. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay, I want to start by maybe showing us or sharing with you one picture of the there are different representations of the finished product that we can have. And the first version that I want to show you is what a poster style version could look like. Okay, so this could be a poster representation of the main ideas in the plan. So at the top, we have the promise, and the promise is equity, excellence, empowerment for every student every day. It's a carryover from the current strategic plan that's expiring and from the equity work that the board has done recently. Then we have the profile of a graduate, and there are 6 qualities in that profile. You'll see it in more detail later on. So the promise first, the profile of the graduate, the 5 goals for student success, and then finally, what we have to get really good at to get home. So this first column, it's all about circle number 1, and then the second column is about circles 2 and 3. This is one of the many ways we can represent the entire strategic plan on just a couple sheets of paper. Okay, so I'm going to go back to. Sharky, did it switch back to the 3 circles? Or do I need to refresh my screen? What are you seeing now, please?
We see the 3 circles,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Thank you. So what I'd like to do is to get into a little bit more detail about each one of these 3, and I'll pause after each one for your questions and comments, please. So let's start with the student learning. Specifically, the equity principles that the board has been working on. That's the starting point.
And let me just add there, Mutiu, again, what we're calling the equity principles. This is the board's equity statement. So we wanted to be sure that the equity statement that the trustees have worked on this year was the first part of the strategic plan. And again, it is incorporating what we saw in terms of the mission from our previous strategic plan. That's where you all started these conversations. And this just shares how we were able to get a little bit more specific in what the board wanted the community to know about how we view equity in Washington Unified.
Okay, thanks. Then next comes the equity promise. Think of this as a shorthand for our mission, our vision, and our core values. Dr. Hildreth, anything you want to add to this page, please?
Yeah, so we, again, as the team, strategic plan team, one of the impacts from the last strategic plan was everyone really understood that we support all students by name and by need. And so as we are looking at our new strategic plan, and that has been such a core belief of all, everywhere I go, people do know that statement. So we wanted to have that incorporated in a newer statement that included some of the things that we've heard from all of our planning groups throughout the year. And so we came up with what are the things that we really have been talking about this year? What do we want for our students? And number 1 has been equity. Of course, our goal is excellence and excellence for all, and the need to ensure that our students, our staff have agency and their voices are heard so that they feel seen, valued, and respected. And so we felt that this is really about making sure there's empowerment for everyone in the system. And even in the previous strategic plan, self-empowerment was one of those beliefs. So we felt if we could put this in a statement that really can become that updated version of by name and by need, we want equity, we want excellence, and we want empowerment, but we want it for every student every day. And we thought by adding every day, that helps us keep focus on our goal of every morning, every school day, wherever you work in Washington Unified, this is what we're striving for every day, that our students, we see them every single day, and we're going to do our best every day. So this is what we felt could encompass that new phrase that we can all highlight when people ask, what is Washington Unified School District about? We can say we're about equity, we're about excellence, we are about empowerment, and we are doing those three things for every student every day.
Thank you. It's great. Then the second part of what we want for students is in the portrait of a graduate, 6 qualities and 3 statements, which we call attributes, that go with each one of those qualities. Rather than reading to you, I'm just going to leave it on the screen for you to get a feel for the content and the structure. And be more than happy to take your comments or questions.
Do we have any comments or questions? Looking at the people in the room, seeing no raised hand. Oh, yes?
No.
Nope.
Oh, okay. Kobe?
Not that this is really a question, it's more like a comment, which I think it actually works very well because as I'm reading this, a lot of it is similar, if not taken from the 15-16 statement. So it's blending in very nicely into, or not statement, but our strategic plan from back then. And it seems like we're doing a good job of building and moving forward into the next phase.
Yeah, that's a really great observation, especially since we didn't say, this is 2016, work it into your, it means that the 2016 plan, people have already embraced it. It was part of their thinking. So it just came up naturally in the new version. So I was very impressed also. So this is the aspirational expression of what we want for our students. Character, integrity, being collaborative, and so on. Then we take that one step deeper, and that is to now define some goals that we're going to take on over the next 5 years, goals which we hope will drive us towards the portrait of the graduates. And we define 5 goals. Goal number 1 and goal number 5 are what I like to call the bookends, very much like the bookends on my bookshelf. So goal number 1, it's about very strong foundation for all children. Think of goal number 1 as being age 3 to grade 3, roughly. Goal number 5 is a culminating goal, the other end of the book, the scale, and that is about getting them ready to rock and roll after high school. How do we get our graduates ready for success in college, career, and life? So with the 2 bookends in place, goal 1 and goal 5, then we could talk about, if we were to add 2 or 3 additional goals in between those 2 bookends, what would those 2 or 3 goals be? Goal number 2 is a recognition of the importance of the social emotional aspect of our students' development. So that's called whole child, healthy, safe, challenged, and supported. So that's the SEL goal. Goal number 3 is the academic goal or the cognitive goal. So that's described as opportunity and achievement for every student. And goal number 4 could have gone 2 ways. It could actually have been a goal, an idea, the idea of disproportionalities could have been defined in each of the other 4 goals. All the folks who participated chose to call it out by name and make it a separate goal. And that is the notion of the elimination of disproportionalities. So 2 bookend goals, 1 social emotional learning goal, 1 academic goal, and 1 goal that goes back directly at the notion of equity in terms of access and outcomes for students. Now, once we have the goals in place, we need to define some specific metrics. How would we know we're making progress towards the goals? And I don't recall the board member who brought this up early on, but this is the first expression of what those metrics will be, the things we will actually be measuring over time to ensure that we're getting students to achieve the goals we've set. I'm going to leave that up on the screen just for you to take a look at, and feel free to ask questions or share your comments, please.
Yeah. Clerk Venegas, I see your hand moving. No. Okay. But these are the metrics that you were looking forward to.
Yeah,
looking at.
I'm just asking Mario to zoom in. I was just asking Mario to zoom in. So we can-
Gotcha. But, yeah.
You notice that it's a mix of the soft measures as well as the hard measures, so to speak, the qualitative and the quantitative.
If you're on your computer, the presentation was also emailed to us. That's easier to see.
Okay. It's great. Should we go on? Any questions or comments? Yes, please.
Just hang on a second. Let me finish reading.
Certainly.
Okay.
Go ahead, Trustee Pizzotti. Oh, no, you're good.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's these that we're going to transform into performance targets. So every year we'll decide which one of these goals or measures we're going to take on, and we'll set some specific targets. So they go from just being nice ideas on paper, or things that you can see on the dashboard of results. Okay. So those three parts really take care of circle number one. First, the promise. The second one will be the portrait of a graduate, and then the third one will be the goals and measures. And you notice that as we go down from the promise to the goals, to the portrait, to the goals and measures, it gets more and more fine-grained. And the most fine-grained up to this point is the second column on the screen. Okay. So now we have to talk about us, the adults. So if we want to get our kids home, what are those things that we must get really good at in order for all students to be successful? And we propose an approach that it asks us to imagine that in order for us to get them home, we need to define some building blocks for home. We call those the 4 pillars. So if we could build our educational house on just 4 foundations, what would those 4 foundations be? And the criteria that we offer will be that we need one foundation that's about teaching and learning. We need one foundation about house that recognizes that schools can't do it alone. We need one foundation that's about investing in people so that they can be at the top of their own game over time. And we need one foundation that's how we make sure all the pieces come together. So these are the 4 plain English labels for the foundations of our house, for the building blocks of our educational house. And we want those building blocks to nurture not only the students, but also the adults. And the academic language that Washington USD folk came up with for the teaching and learning foundation is equity-focused teaching and learning. For the schools can't do it alone foundation, we call that strong partnerships with families and community. For the investing in people, it's learning and growth for all employees. And for managing the whole, it's about safe planning and equitable access. So these now are think of this as the muscles that we have to build, the competencies that we have to get really good at. It also suggests that we want to make sure that we don't get seduced away by other interesting things in very much the same way you wouldn't knock down the foundations of your house or a building willy-nilly. Pick the right foundations and then just work it over time so that they hold everything up. So all the work of the adults will be framed around the 4 pillars. What we do around instruction will be based on the 4 pillars. What we do around community support will be based on the 4 pillars because we are all living in the same house, so to speak. Okay. So if we were to now use those 4 pillars as foundations for the instructional piece. For the teaching practices, it's the same 4 foundations, but what teachers do under each one of them will be different. And now we have some very explicit language for the practices that we want all of our teachers to get really good at. They can go beyond these 8, but very much in the same way that we set standards for students. This approach is inviting us to set the standards for adult practices, that these practices are the things we want everyone to master over the course of their career. So not only do we support them in mastering them, but we also have a common set of practices so that it doesn't matter which school a student comes to within our district, they can be expected to be taught by folks who adhere to these practices. So those are the teaching practices. Then we also have the leadership practices, the same 4 pillars, but what leaders do now is about supporting instruction. And then we have the organizational practices, which is what the district level has to do to support the leaders so that they can support the teachers in order to improve learning for students. So teaching practices, leadership practices, and organizational practices. So that's all I want to say about instruction. The last part, I'm going the wrong direction, will be, actually, let me just touch on this briefly. One of the needs that Dr. Hildreth emphasized is it's ensuring that we have alignment with other initiatives that the district is invested in. And one of those is the equity audit that was conducted in 4 of our schools. So we work very closely with NCOS. I've known Joe Johnson for more than a decade to make sure we align the work that we are doing at a macro level. The strategic plan is a couple thousand feet above ground level. What he did at those 4 schools, Bridgeway Island, Elkhorn Village, Stonegate, and Westmore Oaks, was to really define some specific things that we can do on the ground. And their framework and ours fit very nicely together because we've been working together for a few years. Okay, so that's it on instruction, some specific recommendations. Then the last part is circle number 3. Think of this as how the rest of us will support instruction. And the model for that, again, is the same 4 pillars. But what we do at the district level or what the community does could vary. And so these 12 strategies, we call them strategic priorities, are the things we have to do beyond instruction. And I won't spend too much time on the details, but for each one of those pillars, we define some specific key actions. Dr. Hildreth talked about this early on. And those key actions are set up as those that will apply across the entire system, as well as key actions that are equity specific. The key actions that are designed to address the needs of specific students or student groups. So again, the first column, this is where the rubber meets the road, are the things we're gonna do, student voice, fidelity of our implementation, making sure that we collaborate with students and parents, etc. This applies to all students. But we also have some student groups that need particular attention. So we have 3 recommendations here. One of those is about English learners. How do we accelerate literacy instruction for English learners, including intervention services for special ed students aligned to those students' IEPs? That's an equity need we have within our system at this point. I mean, that we have to address within our system. A second equity-specific key action, it's around increasing the participation of traditionally underserved student groups in select programs, GATE, AVID, AP, STEM, career pathways, and so on. And the third one, which is a little bit unconventional, is that equity cannot be at the expense of the higher performing students. We will not have true equity by seeming to penalize those students who are doing well. already. So how do we expand opportunities for those higher performing students? For us, in our conception of equity, that's something we need to pay attention to also. So we want to raise the floor and want to raise the ceiling also. And for those students who are really struggling, we want to raise the floor faster, but not by holding back the higher performing students. So then the next one for pillar B, which is the schools can't do it alone pillar. System-wide, one of the recommendations is the family university idea, just instituting that as a regular program for parents and caregivers. The second one is collaborating with community-based organizations around the health and human service needs of our students. For example, the YOLO Children's Alliance Initiative. And the third one will be partnerships with businesses, higher ed, local employers, and so on. So all of these apply to all students. On the equity specific side of schools can't do it alone, the two recommendations, one is about having an advocate for struggling or at-risk students. And the second one is about YOLO High School. How do we expand opportunities for those students to have enrichment programs? This came out as a very specific observation based on the data that in many respects, the YOLO High School youth feel neglected or ignored relative to access to extracurricular and co-curricular activities. So those are the equity priorities there. On the third one, I just focus on the equity one. It's around the way we allocate resources based on the needs of students. The second one would be attracting, developing, and retaining a more diverse workforce. That's an equity challenge also. And finally, how do we connect our teachers to strategies that will increase their effectiveness in dealing with students who have trauma-sensitive, trauma-informed issues. And then finally, on the managing the whole, bringing it all together, the equity challenge there would be around implementing language-specific and culture-specific communication and outreach programs. And then finally, partnering with other agencies around town. I do want to call your attention to D3, the implementation of a wellness center at each school or some central location that's accessible to the schools. So that's all we really need to cover at this point. We can talk about implementation later on. Questions, comments about the strategies, please, and the key actions.
Welcome, Vice President Kirby Gonzalez. I'm trying to squint my eyes. Does anybody in the room have any questions or comments? Seeing none, Trustee Pizzotti, do you have any comments?
I was just going to wait until Mutiu was finished with his presentation, so you can go on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, appreciate it. So the last section, it just frames some of the things we might be thinking about moving forward. As I said before, the easy part is the plan. The tough part is the implementation. And in our experience, about 2/3 of districts follow through on their strategic plan. And I'm always hoping and praying that our clients wouldn't fall. Some of our clients do too, that will not be the case with Washington USD. And to help guide the implementation process, we just tie things back to time, to a calendar. So every 3 to 6 years is about strategic planning. That's what we're finishing up now. Then we suggest that we get into a very disciplined way of defining what do we have to do at the start of the school year. We call that charting the course. What do we have to pay attention to every week? We call that monitor and adjust. What must we do every month? That's about capacity building every 6 to 12 weeks. And then every the mid-year and end of year. And at every point in the process, we're always looking at data and using data to drive everything that, very much like we did with the strategic plan, where we started with the data. We suggest that the start of the school year, every week, every month, etc., must also be informed by data. In last slide, in terms of some implementation priorities for your consideration, as soon as it's practical, which would probably be early next school year, that we need to share the proposed strategic plan with internal and external stakeholders. We've actually done that twice this week already. We met once this week with the alignment team. We met with them on Monday, I believe. And we met last week with the teachers on the instruction focus team and also those on the core planning team. But bullet number one here is asking us to, is inviting us to share with all of our partners and employees. Bullet number two, we have the goals and the measures. We suggest very strongly that we send some real targets for whichever measures we plan to focus on long-term, if we're in a position to do that, but at a minimum for year one implementation. Then bullet three says we now have a 5-year plan. There's no reason why our schools should be trying to figure out what they should focus on. It's sort of been framed in the plan. So what kinds of improvements or changes do we need to make to how we do school improvement planning? And that can be done fairly quickly, as a matter of fact. Bullet 4 sort of connects with number 2. That's the idea of a dashboard. Bullet 5, it's same as number 4. Number 4 is mostly about a heavy data-driven. 5 is about the process also, that we should be monitoring what we do, which is the roadmap, and what difference it's making, what impact we're having, and that's the scorecard. So we need to monitor the process as well as the outcomes. That's why 4 and 5 come in. And number 6 is for my team. Once you are comfortable with the content and, or with the edits that we've made, the edits you recommend, we can come back and give you a finished version that will be in prose form like this. That's just really packaging it as a more durable document, not just a PowerPoint. So those are some suggestions for your consideration in terms of next steps. Thank you.
Okay, before we move on to board comments, are there any public comments on this agenda item, Mario? Live.
No public comments received.
Okay, and there are no written comments, so let's turn it back to the board for discussion, starting with folks in the room.
I don't really have a whole lot, but after a year, this is good to see, good to refresh. And then I think the roadmap for disciplined implementation helps me kind of see, how we can implement this in a fashion where we can hold each other accountable and really measure what we're doing and how effective our strategic plan is. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Go ahead. Oh, Vice President Kirby-Gonzalez.
Thank you, President Wong. My questions are, I heard, and I apologize for being late, but I did review your presentation online ahead of time as well. And I really do thank you for this work and for how concise it is, and the profile of a student. Some of the graphics like that are very accessible, and I think it really helps our community, the way you've broken down this presentation, as well as the board, to really decipher all the hard work that's gone into it. So my question is, I see the implementation and I agree that looks very helpful to follow. You said 2/3 about follow through with the timeline. Are there things that we can do as a board or places you see where districts are successful with implementation that we can make sure that we do as well beyond this? Is there anything additional that you would say we should work on?
Yes, a few ideas. It would be great if the board could take the lead in realigning what the board chooses to work on and making explicit connections to the strategic plan. Now, it could be as simple as just referencing which part of the 3 circles in the strategic plan it connects with, or which pillar or which goal. At a minimum, this item, it's about goal number 3 and strategy number 7 or strategy H, right? A few districts, totally revamp the way to do the agenda item. So rather than just showing where it could fit in, they totally restructure their agenda according to the strategic plan. You don't have to do that. Doing the first one will be good enough. That's one. The second one, which we referenced in item 3, is some districts will go through the strategic planning process, and then they will keep doing their annual school improvement plan and department plan the same way. So that's like keeping 2 books, and you could go to jail for doing that. So item 3 is really critical, to have the schools be talking about their targets for the school year on the basis of what's in the strategic plan for the goals and measures, and to be using the framework of the 4 pillars that's in the strategic plan. So in other words, we're all speaking the same language. That's a second really important step. A third one goes back to accountability. And it's at 2 levels that the successful districts do this. One will be, how we're doing this, we just did it yesterday with another district in New York. At least 2 times a year, the board will have a public presentation of the status report, the status of the strategic plan, twice a year, on an evening like this. So there's a mid-year report and an end-of-year report. And that kind of accountability not only holds us to follow through on our commitments, it's a very powerful way of keeping your stakeholders committed and trusting of the process. So that's part A of the accountability piece. The second one, which it's not as easy to pull off, but if you could pull it off, it'd be great. I'll give you the example of Rochester, New York. Years ago when we worked with them, Rochester had 5 or 6 real drivers of the community. It was the business community headed by Eastman Kodak, which doesn't exist anymore. The United Way, the Urban League, the mayor of the city of Rochester, and the county executive for Monroe County that Rochester is part of, and then the higher ed, University of Rochester. So we will convene them at the start of each school year, and each one of those 6 partners will define in writing what they're going to do to support the district that year. And then we'll meet with them every quarter to say, University of Rochester and the other universities, you said you were going to do this year. Give us a status report. United Way, what's yours? The city of Rochester, the county of Monroe, and so on. So that would be the ultimate. We call it the Community Roundtable for Performance and Accountability. And it was the principles of each one of those groups that came. It was Kodak's president. It was the John Calabrese, who headed United Way at that point. Bill O'Brien was the chancellor of the University of Rochester. But they only had to commit only a few hours every quarter. So that's the ultimate when it really comes to keeping everyone coordinated and aligned. Those 3 things, if you did those 3, align your own work as a board to the plan, and ensure that the schools and the departments align their day-to-day work to the language and intent of the plan, and then the accountability piece to the public, and then so you holding them accountable for their piece through the roundtable, and they're holding you accountable by suggesting that you report out twice a week. They go a long way, really long way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. If I could ask one more question, President Wong.
Go for it.
Okay. One question and suggestion. My suggestion is in seeing your partners and reading over, I would suggest that we also make sure that we're deliberate in including the chamber, that we share with them what our strategic plan is. Maybe they already have been, but I didn't see that on the list. And then my question would be, and this might have been gone over, and I apologize if it has, you can be very brief, but was the prior strategic plan helpful in this process? Were there any big takeaways from the prior strategic plan or work that needed to be done on that you saw weave into this?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, but I'll ask Dr. Hildreth to speak to that too.
Thank you.
Yes, hi, Vice President Kirby Gonzalez. When we started the presentation, and I will send to you the information, we shared a slide deck of some highlights from the previous strategic plan to show that it was really the foundation of the equity work and how it shows the strategic objectives, the mission, the core beliefs are now incorporated in not only our equity principles, which is the board's equity statement, and in our portrait of a graduate. So that was the beginning, but those slides you do not have, so we will make sure you get them.
Perfect, thank you.
Clerk Venegas, any comments? Okay, turning it over to the virtual space. Trustee Pizzotti?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is great, and I can't wait till we adopt this and hit the ground running. The questions I have was upon adoption, how do we start implementing for the next school year? Does the site administrators, staff, teachers get this maybe a week beforehand and start, or even a month beforehand and start looking at it, reviewing it, so we can have a beginning of the year, discussion on how to start bringing these strategies in place?
Yeah,
that's question one.
That actually started on Tuesday.
Okay.
Right? Dr. Hildreth, you want to speak?
Yes, so on Tuesday at the admin advance, we presented this to the administrators, school administrators and district. And the focus is really just starting, it's a lot. Just recognizing it as a lot and helping them to remind them that this is what we're trying to do over 5 years so that everyone doesn't get just overwhelmed. And so one of the first pieces is, as we have done this year in our work, is we start with making sure the leaders know what the document is, what's in it, so that they can have these conversations. But in year one, the real focus is going back to number one, the goals and the measures. And for each of those goals, working with our site administrators on what's the one metric in each area that we want to start with. So if we're going to start with the early success in early years, for example, if we're saying our focus for year one is making sure students meet or exceed early literacy and early numeracy standards. So the other two goals are important, but what's the one we're going to start with year one? So for example, if it was number 3, then we're asking, getting back into the implementation, is what would that look like? So having them really be intentional. If we're saying students are meeting and exceeding, how do we know? What measurement are we using? Those then become the conversations with the teachers and get into that cycle of support at the school level and the professional development that is aligned to literacy and numeracy. So it's, again, taking each goal for year one, selecting one measure that we're going to focus on in all of the schools, and then each school having that conversation about the key actions. What is it going to take for them to know that they're doing that?
Okay. And then question 2 was kind of, it's not question, it's kind of like a statement, but it's kind of piggybacking on what Mutio said about the agendas. I was thinking along the lines of, when you click on our board agenda online and there's a description of what that agenda item is, we should have a line on there that aligns which part of the strategic plan that this agenda item is working towards implementing, or somehow, how does this fit with what we plan to do? So we know that we're staying on course and we're staying targeted, so that each agenda item is definitely guiding us towards our path.
Yes.
Yes, so we will, that is a plan, and
Okay.
just if we think about before we went to Gamut and we were in Agenda Online, that I think it was like the core beliefs of the mission were part of the agenda. They were listed, and then you in creating or developing the agenda, it was aligning to just what you're
The
saying.
LCAP.
What's the goal
Yeah.
we're focusing on? The strategic plan, yes, the LCAP. And so we will be getting back to that. We just paused on those because we knew we were going through this process, but that is a plan to incorporate, to bring that back to our agendas.
Any other
Thank you.
comments? No other. Me too. Dr. Hiller, thank you so much for your work on this. Looking forward to kind of incorporating this. I like this idea of a community kitchen cabinet or accountability partners, which I'm like, oh, all those people would probably come quarterly to help us move this along. So really appreciate that. And thank you for your time. Seeing that there are no other comments. Thank you, and we'll see you next time, you two.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Be well. Moving on to our public hearing, item 1, presentation of the Washington Unified School District 2022-2023 adopted budget that will be possibly amended after the budget is signed again. But yes. Go ahead, Monique. I know that you presented before. And
good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening this evening. Can you hear me okay?
No, don't touch that.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Good evening. This evening we are.
Can I ask the folks in the room, we can also hear the whispering?
I know, I'm sorry. If this microphone was in the right location. You can hear us whisper, that's great, but can you hear Monique? Well enough?
Yes, but when you were whispering, we could not hear Monique.
Sorry, yes, it was with good intentions.
That's okay. Now, Monique, go ahead. Now we can hear you.
That's wonderful. We've got this, folks. So thank you for having us this evening. Our fiscal director, Billy Dubin, and I will be presenting the 2022-23 adopted budget. This is a public hearing, and I want to make sure that we understand that this is a 2-step process. So tonight's the public hearing, and we'll be coming back later on this month asking for approval. Next slide. So as we begin all of our presentations, our first item that we review is our annual budget cycle. We are at a new school year, so we are getting ready for a new school year. And so we are beginning this cycle all over again with the first item, and that's our adopted budget here in June. Next slide. Brief overview of what we'll cover today. We'll begin with legal requirements. Then we'll have just a little information on core messages and assumptions. And we will review the adopted budget summary and discuss our next steps. Next slide, please. So our legal requirements. Our adopted budget reflects the estimated revenues and expenses for the 21-22 school year, also known as our estimated actuals. It also has our projected budget for next school year and the subsequent 2 fiscal years. As I shared, this is a 2-step process. Tonight, we're having our public hearing, and on June 23rd, we will come back and ask for your adoption of that budget. Next slide. So let's talk about our core message and key assumptions. Next slide. A lot of the information in our adopted budget we have shared with you at our previous meetings. At our last board meeting, we did talk about the governor's May revise, so we decided not to review that information as you've already seen it. However, we did want to take a moment to talk about our enrollment and average daily attendance. Although we share this with you often, we felt it was very important to continue to bring forth the fact that we are projecting a decline in enrollment and an associated decline in our average daily attendance. And we need to create and implement a plan to adjust and address these trends. Next slide. We also wanted to circle back to the fact that we do have a cost of living adjustment for this year, and that we wanted to be specific that that is per ADA, per average daily attendance. So it's not across the board increase, increase in our funding by 6.56%. It's our local control funding formula, our main source of funding, but it's directly linked to our average daily attendance. Next slide. And finally, we wanted to talk about the 10% reserve cap. We've been talking about it all year long. And as a reminder, this is a limit on the amount of reserves that we could have in our budget. And that's associated with our assigned and unassigned reserves. In this budget, we are proposing that we commit a portion of our reserves to help us plan for the future. Specifically, we're looking at committing, of course, our post-employment benefits, and that's something that you all authorized earlier this year so we can plan for our retirees. Deferred maintenance. However, in future years, we are recommending that we also commit a portion of our reserves to our supplemental and concentration efforts so that we can designate our reserves to be able to support our students in the future. And then also commit some monies to technology refresh. Over the past few years, we've made significant investments into technology, and we want to make sure that we continue to refresh that technology and stay current. So we're not in a situation where our students, our teachers, our staff have outdated technology. We want to stay current. Next slide. So at this time, I'm going to pass the virtual microphone to our fiscal director, Billy Dubois.
Hi, thank you. The adopted budget summary. We're going to start with the revenues for the 22-23 school year. We are expecting 119 million in total revenue between our restricted and unrestricted sources. The largest source of revenue is, of course, going to be the LCFF funding, a local control funding formula, which we expect to receive just over 86 million. Next slide. For our expenses, we are estimating spending 123 million in the 22-23 school year. About 80% of that continues to be our total salaries and benefits, which are about 89 million, the top right corner there. We anticipate spending about 11 million in books and supplies, 15 million in operating expenditures and services, and then 7 million in capital outlay. Next slide, please. This slide shows our fund balance. It takes the total revenue and expenditures from the previous two slides, and then shows the net impact. After our contribution to the special ed programs, it looks like we are going to be lowering our ending fund balance by just over 4 million. Next slide, please.
Billy, can I ask you a question back on that slide?
Yes, of course.
I read that as we're deficit spending. Is that an incorrect read?
No, that's correct. We are spending more than we are bringing in next year, but we're carrying over some of the budgets from the ESSER 3 spending plan.
Okay. As we have discussed before, I just wanted to clarify that this is an indication of we're just deficit spending.
Yeah, lowering the reserve and spending the ESSER money.
And to clarify, in our restricted, we are using our, for lack of better words, our excess COVID monies. Those are monies that we have multiple years to spend, and we just can't spend it all in 1 year. And so that's why you see the deficit. I think it's also important to look at our unrestricted expenses, And that's the money that we use for the heart of the work that we do, that we can use for all of our main services for our students. And in that area, we are deficit spending. We are spending more than we're bringing in. So we need to be mindful of that particular situation. Go ahead, Lily.
Thank you.
Okay. Next slide, please. Mara, we get the next slide.
You see it on your end?
I think it's the purple.
Yeah, the fund, I
You
think
can
you
go-
skipped over the fund balance,
Okay.
which you go backwards one,
Yeah.
where you have a deficit spending of $1.
$1.
Yeah, that's just a rounding error that I pulled up. Okay, this is, yeah, leave it on this slide, please, the purple, the fund balance. This shows our beginning balance, fund balance and ending fund balance for the restricted and unrestricted sides. And then we take out our reserve for economic uncertainty, the restricted budget, and then the commitments that Monique just discussed a couple slides ago, which leaves an unassigned fund balance of just over $4.5 million. Next slide, please. This is the multi-year projection slide, and it shows the next couple of years of how our uncommitted fund balance will change through 23, 24, and 24, 25.
I would like to share just a bit on this particular slide. Billy, if you don't mind that I hop in.
No, please.
This slide does not take into account all of the services that are currently paid for with our restricted funds, creating a plan to move all of them back into our unrestricted expenses. So we will need to continue the work that we've started this year in evaluating those programs and services to determine which ones we will continue to have to be able to bring them back into our unrestricted expenses, or find an alternative way to pay for those services. Go ahead, Billy.
Great. Next slide, please. Oh, and we are to the next steps. Next slide. Today, we are doing the public hearing. Our next step is the board meeting on June 23rd, where we're going to ask for your approval of the adopted budget.
That's my birthday.
Oh.
Just important to announce. Yes, I know.
And then once the budget is enacted, we will, of course, review it and make the necessary changes, and we will either be back. Let's go to the next slide. We'll either be back after the adopted budget for the 45-day revise if we need to do that, or we will be back in September for the unaudited actuals. And that is the adopted budget.
Okay, I'm gonna move on to any public comments that we might have. Mario, are there any?
No public comments received.
Okay, turn it over for board discussion and questions. I'll start with the virtual space. Trustee Pizzotti?
Yeah, thank you. So is this is including, so this is based off the current ADA funding formula, right?
We actually decided to move forward with a 3-year average.
Oh,
based
good.
on the latest information that we were able to receive. Oh wow, I think it was just last week or the week before, we received information that the legislature is also proposing that we move forward with that 3-year average. So that is included.
Oh, good. Because I was thinking, man, we're in good shape if we have this much money left over after a declining enrollment like that. So I was shocked. So I noticed also that the projection on COLAs has gone up for the 2 out years. Can you speak on that a little bit?
The projection on COLA is the same as what we were project for the out years. I believe, Billy, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're the same as what we had in our second interim. However, for
I thought we
this
had
year,
like 3%.
Five.
I thought it said like 3% in the out years.
Yeah, I think it went up after the May revision.
Yeah,
And that is not, is that included in this?
Yeah.
presentation,
Mhm.
Billy?
it went up to 5%.
Yes.
Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, I thought it was around 3.5% next year, and even less than that the year after. But this time it says next year's 5.3%, and a little bit less than that now year of 4 or 5. Yeah, I believe it's 4 or 5. So okay, this is good to know. Good to know. That's like very beneficial to hear. So I want to applaud you and the board as well for making the decisions to stow away money in the OPEB. I can't say how great this is going to be, especially in a recession. The ability to utilize that money to backfill the general fund when we have to pay for post-employment benefits and our COLAs go down and everything goes down. So I thank you so much for that.
Comments from the board members inside the room.
You want to go, Sarah?
I'll just go first. Thank you for the presentation. Very, very clean, very, very straightforward. And answers all my questions to keep it very simple. So thank you.
I have no
Trustee Burke.
comments.
Okay.
I just have one question. On the technology, how do you, I know it makes me happy that we're projecting for that. But how do you project, like it was 1.5, 0, 0, 1.5, 1.53? Is that just, we're just rounding up because we think we're going to have to replace? Is there like a ballpark, something that you were like, oh, we have this many computers? I'm sure you did a formula, but
Yeah.
just curious.
What's important in this process, is that we meet with every director and every principal to review their budget, and we ask them, what do you see in the future? What do you need? And so we definitely rely on our experts in our technology department to be able to help us with those projections.
Cool.
To be able to say, these are the things that we see in the future. And so we work with them and take their expertise to be able to guide us.
Awesome. Thank you. That was it. The rest of it's great. Thanks.
Okay. Any other comments from in the room? No,
Nope.
seeing that or none? Thank you so much. We know that we will come back on a 45-day revise. So, and really appreciate you, which is actually, I think, more money because we have more money in the state than we have ever had. So that we're looking forward to that conversation. And also looking forward to the conversation around needing to absorb what we're funding with restricted right now. And in the future, hopefully there'll be a board study session about what that plan could and should look like. Because it is a lot of money, we've grown there. So just want to be mindful that there's more money, but there are also in another way that there's a cliff that we are going to need to expect when that all expires. All right, thank you so much. Oh, and congratulations, Billy. I think it's your first
thank you.
presentation to us, right?
Yes.
In your
Thank
new
you.
role.
Yep.
Wonderful job, wonderful job. All right, moving on to item number M2, public hearing for WSD Lcap. Ms. Stephanie Grote and Stan, Assistant Superintendent Moisage.
Thank you, President Wong. Pursuant to Ed Code, school districts are required to hold at least one public hearing to solicit recommendations, comments of members of the public regarding specific actions and expenditures proposed in the local control accountability plan, known as Lcap. And the public hearing is supposed to happen at the same meeting as the public hearing for the budget. So here we are together. And as was mentioned earlier, we are looking to come back with this item for action at the next board meeting as well. And with us here tonight, we have Stephanie Grote, our Director of Compliance and Accountability. She has been our lead in developing this plan, and she's here with us tonight to give us a brief presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, President Wong, board members, Superintendent Hildreth, and community members. This evening, it is my pleasure to share with you the Washington Unified School District draft LCAP. Next slide. So again, just a reminder that the LCAP is a 3-year plan. The LCAP allows us, our district, to tell a story that is in a way to be readable and understandable to the public. Next slide. And as I said that, I'm sure you all saw that it is 112 pages. And so readable and 112 does not always go together. But what I'm going to do tonight is actually talk about the components of the LCAP. As we spent much of our time last year revising our goals, looking at our actions and metrics, I will not be going over each of them, but as part of the public hearing, wanted to make sure everyone understood what was part of that LCAP. Next slide. The first section is actually the budget overview for parents. And at this point, I would like to welcome back Billy, our Director of Fiscal, to present this section.
All right, great. Hello again. Budget overview for parents. Next slide, please. Okay, once again, we're starting with revenue for the 22-23 school year. As we just saw, we are expecting 119 million in total revenue and 86,437,144 is from the local control funding formula. On the little graphic, the LCFF dollars are the large light blue circle or Pac-Man on the left. The other blue circle on the right represents the total, the whole circle is 86 million, and then the small little triangle is the 15 million of supplemental concentration grant amount. That is the revenue that is generated based on the enrollment of the high needs, foster youth, the English learner, and low income students. Next slide, please. Okay, and this shows expenditures. The total budgeted expenditures in the LCAP are just over $18 million. Some things we don't have in the NCAP or LCAP, sorry, are personnel costs, step and column movement, costs of utilities, insurance, food services and in the LCAP, maintenance, transportation. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this one shows the total budgeted expenditures for the high needs students in the LCAP for 21-22. We had just over 5.5 million planned for increase and improve services of the high needs students. And our actual expenditures are slightly over that, but we plan on identifying more. Next slide.
Okay, so I'm going to remind you that back in February, because I'm sure everybody remembers, we had a presentation regarding our supplement to the annual update. It was a one-time supplement. Next slide. Sorry, Maria. That was presented at the board meeting. We had a meeting that went over all of the 5 requirements. That part of the LCAP begins on page 6. Next slide. No changes were made to the annual supplement since that information was presented back in February. So with our 2022 LCAP, that actually also begins within the plan on page 6. So next slide. Thank you. The LCAP goals have not changed in their entirety, and we're going to talk a little bit about You just heard a presentation about the strategic plan and that point of aligning them and making sure that we are giving the sites in our district one common motion and moving forward. The LCAP goals were previously adopted, but then in working with performance facts and looking at how our current goals really do align with those goals for student success. Next slide. Within the LCAP plan summary, we have these 4 sections: our general information, as well as our reflections. Those include our successes, as well as our data. Some of our data, as we know, our dashboard has not been updated since we have not had CAS for a while, and that had been suspended. So it does have some old data in it, but we will bring back information at the next meeting about what is going to happen with the LCAP moving forward. The plan summary does also include LCAP highlights. And then there's a section for our CSI schools, and we do not have any schools that are in CSI or comprehensive support and improvement. Next slide. So educational partner engagement. This is a new term this year. It replaces the word stakeholder. So when we hear educational partner, that is actually the word that is replacing stakeholder in previous LCAPs. One of our extremely valuable educational partners, of course, this year came from our strategic planning with performance facts. This slide actually highlights one example of a way in which, in working with our educational partners, this one happens to be our ELPAC, or English Learner Parent Advisory Committee, how they had provided feedback, and then we've actually added some additional actions to support and reflect the input and feedback that was gathered from that educational partner. Next slide. Last year, we brought forward the new measuring and reporting results metric. This is taken directly from our LCAP that was adopted last year, that 3-year plan. And this is, again, is just one example of what it looks like with our new year 1 outcomes. So you can see the sign that says new. That means that is the new part within the LCAP. We did work together with all of our departments within Washington Unified School District to actually identify and monitor both our metrics as well as our actions to determine what progress we were making and be able to report that to all of you. Next slide. This is an example of one of the LCAP actions where it actually looks at our new actions and what are our funds, and then if it is contributing or not. And we're going to talk about what contributing means in a little bit. Next slide. So as we look at our goals, we have not made any changes to those original 3 goals. The information with the metrics and the actions are presented in the LCAP. And then under each of the goals, there is a goal analysis. So that is a description of any differences in the planned actions and the actual implementation of these actions, as well as an explanation of any material differences between our what we had budgeted and our estimated actual expenses. So as you heard in the budget presentation, and as we were talking about our restricted funds and how we may have used some of the other funds to support some of these actions, we're going to talk about how that's reflected in the tables in a little bit. So as we look through this, you will be able to see within the LCAP all of that information and that analysis. And then what we're highlighting here are just some of the more adjustments in the actions that we wanted to bring to your attention, such as the adding of additional funding to a particular action, as well as maybe some additional actions, such as, so adding funds would be like with our supplemental support for curriculum to support our EL students. That does go directly to support our high needs students, our identified students, and as a contributing factor, as well as site supports for targeted students, looking at supporting general education teachers with some push-in for some special education, as well as looking at a newcomer center. Next slide. This one looks at our change in our culture and climate. We've talked a lot about wellness centers and working within the district to do various research for how can we support our sites, knowing that we want to make sure that we do that implementation well. So looking at supporting our sites and our district with wellness centers, as well as some diversity recruitment, and coming up with a plan to look at recruiting a diverse group to work with our students. Next slide. We're out of order. It should be a blue one. There we go. Thank you. So this one is looking at our goal 3, looking at our parent education opportunities. And again, these are just our changes in our actions. When we're looking at our parent education, we had a positive discipline several sessions, and some of the feedback that came was that they wanted that exact session, but offered only in Spanish. We do have a high number of Spanish-speaking families, so looking at how do we support those families and offering those programs in their native language, as well as looking at communication. One of the things that was very beneficial this year was that we didn't hand people the 100, and last year it was 118 pages for those of you who were counting of the LCAP, but actually did look at some translation and brochures that where we could hand our translated LCAP in a more succinct way to our community. So looking at making that an action, as well as our stipends for our staff who support our students. Next slide. This year, we do have a new, as you can see, goal. This is actually a special education goal, and this was part of a required revision to the LCAP in part by SB 98 as well as AB 130, where they looked at different subgroups that had not made progress. And this is based on data from 2019. And as we look at had we made progress, we may have not needed to write this goal if COVID hadn't happened, I'll be honest, and we continued to monitor, but it did. So as part of that law, we do actually need to write a goal with our special education students in mind. This goal did come from working with Andre and Carla and part of the SILPA to identify those needs and look at specifically our graduation rate of our students with disabilities, as well as their college and career readiness factors. Next slide. Okay, so this is one that we always talk about with our contributing versus non-contributing funds. So when we look at our funds and our supplemental concentration funds, we really want to look and ensure that we are meeting the needs of our students that are generating those funds. Some of the things that you will see within the LCAP that are contributing or not contributing depend upon the types of funds. So they must all be LCFF funds. And that is actually a new requirement this year. Previously, we had said that we are meeting the needs through some restricted funds. However, this year that did change. So these are examples of items that could be considered contributing or non-contributing. Next slide. Okay, so the action tables for the 2022-23 school year. Next slide. This is new. This is part of the LCAP where there are actually 5 different tables that we really look at how we are reporting what actions are contributing and what has made that growth. I will notify the public as well as the board that there was actually a computing error in our system in which we entered the information. So we will bring those revised numbers back to you. However, the bottom numbers, if you remember that Pac-Man that Billy talked about at the beginning, the big numbers, the big Pac-Man numbers are not changing, but it will change how the contributing numbers look, as well as if we have any carryover of our supplemental concentration from 21 2020, from this year into 22-23. That's a lot of 20s. Thank you. Next slide. All right. So our next steps, of course, we are here this evening. We have met our requirements. There is a notification to ensure that we are continuing to receive that feedback from our educational partners. We do request the approval at or bringing back at that June 23rd board meeting. Upon that, we will send our LCAP to YCOE, and then it will be posted on our website in both English and Spanish. Next slide. Thank you. So at this time, I will turn it back over.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. Maya, are there any comments in the virtual space or otherwise? Okay. I will start with the folks in the room. Any comments, questions? I'm watching you all look at each other.
I have a comment. It is funny doing it this way, isn't it? So thank you for looking very carefully at us. So my question would be,
Mario has zoomed in very close to you all.
Oh, we did not know that. Okay. So this question may be for later. This might be a better strategic plan question. But when I see the wellness centers budgeted for $1,250,000, and earlier in the other presentation, we heard maybe school nurses or outreach specialists, there might be different people staffing that. So is this a question to answer now in terms of how we know that budget might be used, or is that a question that will be coming in the planning processes?
I would say that would be something that would come in the planning process as we continue to look at bringing back to the board on a more regular basis what are implementation strategies and that progress towards each of the actions.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I look forward to when we discuss that. And then I know you went through the graduation requirement rates for special education. I just want to make sure that I have a clear understanding that when I was looking at the baseline, that is where we are now. And then the desired outcome, it seemed like 61% was low for an outcome if some of our students are at 67.9 or 71.9. Am I reading that incorrectly?
We're going to check that metric out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So so we'll have to still kind of analyze that because I believe it should say 71%.
Okay.
So I'm gonna double check that one. I noticed that in the presentation as well.
Okay, perfect. So that's a good thing for them when it comes back to us next time. So that's all. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other trustees in the room?
Thank you. That was a good.
Nice seeing none.
That was my question too.
Okay, that was Trustee Barnes's question too. Seeing that there are no other questions from the room, Trustee Pizzotti. Okay, thank you so much for the presentation and looking forward to kind of the future planning. I assume that this may be updated the next time through with our strategic planning to align with our strategic plan.
Yes.
Okay. And that's just the primary question. I know we haven't yet adopted the strategic plan, but the next iteration will include some of those elements. Okay. All right. I think you are up. Seeing that there are no other comments or questions, we're going to move on to the second LCAP. Same team for the Washington Middle College High School.
Go Panthers.
Yes, everything we just said a little while ago about needing to have a public hearing for Washington Unified School District LCAP also counts for Washington Middle College High School. And so Stephanie has a brief separate presentation that involved Washington Middle College High School as well.
So thank you again for having me here this evening. We are here for our Washington Middle College LCAP. Next slide. Many of the slides that you will see this evening are exactly the same. So if it is okay, we will go through those fairly quickly. We have worked in conjunction with Principal O'Neill to actually write this LCAP to ensure that it does showcase what is unique and special about Washington Middle College. Our LCAP is a 3-year plan. Next slide. Again, we will review these sections. Next slide. Beginning with the budget overview for parents. And I would like to invite Billy Dupa back. Next
Okay.
slide.
Next slide. Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, the total revenue for Washington Middle College High School is projected at 2.2 million. Just over 2 million of that is from local control funding formula. And 370,000 is generated based on the enrollment of the high needs students. Next slide, please. And the expenditures budgeted in the Lcap. Total Lcap expenditures budgeted are $380,000. And once again, it doesn't include step and column, utilities, consumable materials, and then maintenance operations and food services. Next slide, please.
So the supplement for the annual update, next slide, was presented in February. There are no changes also to the Washington Middle College supplement that was presented at that time. Next slide. The components of the Washington Middle College 2022-23 LCAP, next slide, are exactly the same as were presented before, although they just have the 3 goals. Next slide. The plan summary does include the general information, reflections, and the LCAP highlights. Washington Middle College is not a CSI site. Next slide. One of the things that is unique in regard to Washington Middle College is they also have an advisory as well as parents that are very active within the community. And so this is an example of one of the things that came from feedback that they are recommending in their LCAP is looking at an additional dedicated outreach specialist for their site to support their students. Next slide. Again, this is the year 1 outcome data that's been added to each of the goals. This is just one example from goal 2. This one has to do with attendance. Next slide. This is an example of an increased service to support their PBIS implementation. Next slide. Some of the adjustments in their actions are listed here. This is one for goal 1, looking at continued professional development with their unique site, funds for intervention support, such as an outreach specialist, as well as looking at transportation to support our students and making sure that they can attend the college. Next slide. In goal 2, looking at an additional outreach specialist that can support with that attendance tied directly to that metric. And then of course, the college visit. Next slide. As far as the goal 3 with parent and community engagement, looking at a parent and family liaison to increase that engagement of support of their unduplicated students, our unduplicated students. Next slide. Again, this is an example of an explanation regarding contributing versus non-contributing. This is the same that was presented previously. Next slide. The action tables, next slide. Although they are a little bit different from Washington Unified School District, again, they were part of the glitch within the system, so we will be bringing back those numbers. Again, our Pac-Man sizes don't change, but the numbers regarding their carryover will be brought back for when we do our adoption. Next slide. Same steps with the Washington Middle College LCAP. Information and feedback. There's a process for submitting that. We do encourage people if they have questions to reach out. Suggestions. Next slide. So we're at our comments and discussion. So I will again turn it back over to President Wong.
Thank you, Stephanie. Mario, are there any comments on this item?
No public comments received.
Okay, we'll start with the virtual space. Trustee Pizzotti. No comments, then we will move on to the room. Any comments in the room? Seeing
You're
that
all good.
we are moving through. It's 8:30. We might not have to do the 10 o'clock thing. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you.
Okay, great job. Okay, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Any last minute questions about the consent agenda? If there are none, I will entertain a motion to adopt.
I move.
Clerk Venegas moved. Do I have a second?
I second.
Vice President Kirby Gonzalez seconds. This has to be a roll call vote because we are in hybrid. I vote aye. Trustee Pizzotti?
Aye.
Trustee Barnes?
Aye.
Vice President Kirby Gonzalez?
Aye.
Clerk Venegas?
Aye.
The consent agenda is adopted. We are going to move on to action item P1, Government Code Section 54956.9 D2. And this was discussed in closed session. Assistant Superintendent Stan Mosich.
Thank you. In closed session, the board heard information regarding an approval of amendment to compromise and release agreement between Washington Unified School District and parents and a student for the 21-22 school year. So we're now asking the board to take action on staff recommendations.
Okay. And so are there any public comments on this item, Mario?
No public comments received.
Okay, there was some discussion in closed session with a few of us, so any other, I will entertain a motion to adopt.
I'll move staff recommendations.
Okay, Trustee Pizzotti moved. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Trustee Barnes seconds. Trustee Barnes?
Aye.
I vote aye. Trustee Pizzotti?
Aye.
Vice President Kirby Gonzalez?
I will abstain because I was not present for closed session.
Perfect. Clerk Venegas?
I too will abstain. I was not present for this item.
Okay, thank you. So it is adopted. So item, I just got timed out. So the second item for action item is Government Code Section 54956.9 D2. Pending or potential litigation approval of compromise and release between WSD and parents. Assistant Superintendent Stan Mosich.
Again, in closed session, the board heard information regarding the pending potential litigation, approval of compromise and release agreement. And we are now asking the board to take action on those staff recommendations.
Okay, great. Mario, are there any public comments on this action?
No public comments received.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to adopt staff recommendation.
I'll move to adopt based on staff recommendation.
Okay, Trustee Barnes moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
Trustee Pizzotti seconds. A roll call vote. I vote aye. Trustee Pizzotti?
Aye.
Trustee Barnes? Trustee Barnes?
I think he really means
Glad you're not here.
stay over there.
Okay, Clerk Venegas?
I abstain. I was not present.
You
Sorry
came
about
straight
that.
through. Okay. That's okay. So you abstain, Clerk Venegas,
Yes.
Okay. Trustee Barnes?
Aye.
Vice President Kirby Gonzalez?
I will abstain since I was not in closed session.
And I think I said I vote aye, so the motion is adopted. Government Code Section 54956.9 D2 OAH case number 2020, lots of 2020s today. 2020-10-118. Approval of settlement agreement and general release between WSD and parents and student for the 2021-2022 school year. Assistant Superintendent Stan Mosich.
Once again, we are asking the board to take action on a staff recommendation in closed session.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to approve staff recommendation.
I will move staff recommendations.
Okay, Trustee Pizzotti moves. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Trustee Barnes seconds. Clerk Venegas,
Aye.
Vice President Kirby Gonzalez,
I will abstain since I was not in closed session.
Trustee Barnes,
Aye.
Trustee Pizzotti,
Aye.
and I too vote aye. It is so adopted. We moved item number 4 to information only. Moving on to item number 5, approve the tentative agreement between WSD and Csea. And it's review chapter number 168 for the period beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2024. Assistant Superintendent Kamaljit Panu.
President Wong, Superintendent Hildreth, and trustees, we're with great excitement that we're asking you to approve the tentative agreements between Washington Unified School District and Csea, its Riverview chapter, for the period beginning July 1st, 2021 and June 30th, 2024. We are bringing forward today a multi-year agreement which settles negotiations between the parties for the next two school years. We wanted to congratulate President Gandara and the Csea bargaining team and the WUSD bargaining team for working through several collaborative bargaining sessions to come to these agreements today. So we're asking you to take action to adopt and approve these agreements.
Great. Mario, are there any public comments in regard to this item?
No public comments received.
Seeing there are none, I will turn it to the virtual space. Trustee Pizzotti, any comments?
Oh, just that I would be honored to move this adoption of TA.
Okay, when the time is right, that is so noted. Any comments from the room? Seeing that there are none, Trustee Pizzotti moves. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Vice President Kirk Gonzalez seconds. Roll call vote. Clerk Venegas.
Aye.
Trustee Barnes.
Aye.
Vice President Kirby Gonzalez.
Aye.
Trustee Pizzotti.
Aye.
And I too vote aye. Congratulations, everybody. Moving on to yay. Moving on to item number 6, approval of the 2022-23 and 23-2024 salary schedules. This is a big one for classified employees effective July 1st, 2022 and July 1st, 2023. Assistant Superintendent Kamaljit Panu.
Trustee Wong, as mentioned before, these salary agreements are in support, or salary schedules are published here, and we would like you to take action to approve them because they are in alignment with the previously adopted tentative agreements, which have the multi-year salary enhancements built into those agreements.
Great. Maya, are there any comments on this item?
No public comments received.
Okay, comments from the board in the room, board members in the room. Comment from virtual room. Seeing that there are none, I will move. I will entertain a second.
I second.
Okay, Clerk Venegas seconds. Vice President Kirby Gonzalez.
Aye.
Trustee Barnes.
Aye.
Clerk Venegas.
Aye.
Trustee Pizzotti.
Aye.
And I too vote aye.
This is my
Congratulations.
clapping.
Yay. All right, moving on to item number 7, approval of the disclosure of collective bargaining agreement with the Csea Riverview chapter number 168, Assistant Superintendent Monique Stovall.
And I'm back again requesting your approval of the disclosure of the collective bargaining agreement with our partners, the California School Employees Association, Csea. This disclosure, in essence, is a certification on whether or not we can afford the agreements that you just approved. Based upon our analysis, we can afford those agreements for this year and the subsequent years.
Yes.
This disclosure was also shared with the Yolo County Office of Education.
Great.
Thank you. Any comments, Mario?
No public comments received.
Okay, we'll start with the virtual room. Any comments from the virtual room? Seeing that there are none, any comments in the real room? Okay, seeing there are none, I will entertain a motion to adopt.
A move.
Okay, Clerk Venegas moves. Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Trustee Barnes seconds. Roll call vote. Trustee Pizzotti.
Aye.
Vice President Kirby Gonzalez.
Aye.
Clerk Venegas.
Aye.
Trustee Barnes.
Aye.
And I too vote aye. You have your disclosure. Congratulations. I feel like it's like a, what do you call that, an auction? Moving on to item number 8, 2023. Annual declaration of need for. Okay, 2022-23 annual declaration of need for certificated teaching. Assistant Superintendent Kalanjit Panu, you are up.
Thank you, Trustee Wong. Annually, each year, the district projects on what potential vacancies we may have. Our goal is always to hire fully credentialed staff. This document here allows us in the event that we cannot find a fully credentialed teacher to be able to work with an individual to hire them that while they're progressing towards meeting their credentialing requirements. Sometimes we use this document to hire in interns that are working towards their credential as well. So we're asking the board to acknowledge this declaration and adopt it in a motion to move it forward to the county office.
Great. We like to support our teaching and learning. So any public comments?
No public comments received.
Seeing that there are none. Are there any comments from the, I see a finger up. Trustee Pizzotti, go ahead.
Just a quick question in terms of how many vacant teaching positions do we have moving into the start of next year?
Right now, Trustee Pizzotti, I do believe we have about 15 teaching vacancies. It does go up and down, you know, as we're in that time of some people are choosing to move and things like that. But the last number I had was about approximately 15.
And we continue to hire throughout the summer and preps of.
Yeah. My team and as well as administrators are continuing to interview almost on a daily basis.
Great, thank you.
Any questions from the board members inside the room? Okay, I will entertain a motion to adopt.
So moved based on the fact that I believe we should hire certificated teachers.
I agree. So Trustee Barnes moves. Do I have a second? I will second. So roll call vote. I vote aye. Trustee Pizzotti?
Aye.
Clerk Venegas?
Aye.
Vice President Kirby Gonzalez?
Aye.
Trustee Barnes?
Aye.
Hey, you have your resolution. Thank you so much. Moving on to Q1, Board Governance, Resolution number 2122-39, ordering governing board member election and requesting the Yolo County Board of Supervisors to consolidate district election with regular election held on November 8th, 2022. Dr. Hildreth. Oh, you are on mute, Dr. Hildreth.
Thank you, President Wong. We are bringing forward this resolution per the request from Yolo County Office of Ed, making sure that we are following Ed Code 5340 and 5342 that require all governing board member elections be consolidated to occur with a regular election, which will be held November 8th of 2022 this year, knowing that candidates' filing dates are from July 11th, 2022 through August 5th, 2022. And each interested candidate must file in person at a county elections office located within the trustee area boundaries. The resolution states that we are aware of the consolidation and that newly elected board members will take office on the second Friday in December, which is December 9th. And then our organization meetings are to be held on or after that date. And so we are bringing forth the resolution for approval. And this again is per the request of YCOE, is asking if boards approve it, if we could have that done by and send to YCOE by June 10th.
Tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay, so let me go ahead and read it. So, and so that we know what we're considering.
Resolution ordering governing board member election and requesting the Yolo County Board of Supervisors to consolidate district election with regular election held on November 8th, 2022. Resolution number 2122-39. Whereas a regular biennial election of governing board members of the Washington Unified School District is to be held on November 8th, 2022, and whereas it is desirable that the district election be consolidated with a regular election to be held on the same day, and that within Washington Unified School District, the precincts, polling places, and election officers of the two elections be the same. That the Yolo County Board of Supervisors canvass the returns of the district election and the district election be held in all respects as if they were only one election. Therefore, be it resolved, ordered, and found by the Board of Education of the Washington Unified School District as follows. 1, pursuant to Education Code sections 5304 and 5320 et sequenced, an election is hereby ordered to be held on November 8th, 2022 to fill the offices of the Washington Unified School District Board of Education members whose terms expire this year. The Yolo County Clerk is hereby requested to conduct the election and provide all related election services. 3, if there is a tie vote that makes it impossible to determine which of 2 or more candidates has been elected, the winner shall be determined by a runoff election. 4, the candidates, including incumbents, will pay the cost of publishing the candidate's statement included with a sample ballot whose statement shall not exceed 200 words. The Yolo County Board of Supervisors is hereby requested to consent, agree to, and order the consolidation of the district's governing board member election with a regular election to be held on Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. That only one form of ballot to be used and that the elections be held in all respects as one election. The Yolo County Board of Supervisors is hereby authorized to canvass the returns of the district election. The Yolo County Board of Supervisors is hereby requested to authorize and direct the clerk to take any and all steps necessary for holding of the consolidated election. The Washington Unified School District hereby agrees to reimburse the County of Yolo for the cost of such election. The clerk of this board is hereby directed to file certified copies of the resolution with the Yolo County Board of Supervisors and the County Clerk of Registrar of Voters. That would be you, Clerk Venegas. Passed and adopted by the Washington Unified School District Board of Education on this 9th day of June 22. Any comments from the public, Mario?
No public comments from Mario.
Okay, we will turn it over to trustees in the room. Any comments about this? Comments, questions? Seeing that there are none, Trustee Pizzotti?
No.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to adopt the resolution so that we can send it off tomorrow and get Clerk Venegas' signature.
So moved. Second.
Vice President Kirby Gonzalez moves, Trustee Barnes seconds. Clerk Venegas?
Aye.
I vote aye. Trustee Pizzotti?
Aye.
Trustee Barnes?
Aye.
Vice President Kirby Gonzalez?
Aye. I thought I already said
Okay.
aye, sorry.
Aye, yes. Yes, I do.
Okay, great. The resolution is adopted. Clerk Venegas shall sign and you shall get your, county will get their resolution tomorrow. Yay.
Pen is ready. He has his gold.
Pen is ready. Item number 2, request to approve the regularly scheduled board meeting calendar for 2022, 2023. Thank you for kicking the tires a bit and bringing this back.
Yes, thank you, President Wong. We are bringing this back. We know that the board annually approves the calendar and the dates for its regularly scheduled board meetings. Historically, they've been held on the second and fourth Thursday of each month. And we are hoping with the 2022-2023 school year that we will continue to hold our meetings on the second and fourth Thursdays, hopefully at the West Sacramento City Hall Council Chambers. If there are certain days where there's not availability, then we will convene in room 75 at the district office. And so the changes to the calendar, we had seen that there are some dates that we are going to have one meeting a month because of the dates when school starts. And I'm sorry, I'm pulling it up. Okay. We're having one meeting in the month of July, one meeting in August because of when school starts, and then one meeting in November due to Thanksgiving. Originally, we had proposed to have one meeting in December. However, once we looked at the calendar, we will be able to have two meetings in December because our last week of school ends on the 23rd of December before winter break. And so the 22nd is the fourth Thursday. This will allow us to have a meeting on December 8th and have the options of doing anything we might need to for an organization meeting. We know that we're going to need to have newly elected officers on the 9th. So we will probably have a special board meeting on December 9th. But because we have added some one time a month meetings, we thought it was important to have two in December so that our meeting in January will not be overloaded with items we need to bring to the board. Two meetings in February, two in March, one in April because of spring break, and then two in May and two in June. So this is the 2022-23 calendar that we are asking for approval this evening.
Okay. I just have a comment. So the new trustees, whoever they are sworn in on the 9th.
Yes.
Does it make more sense to actually have a regular scheduled board meeting actually on the 9th? So they're going to do the reorg meeting?
So we can, I mean, this is why this is up for discussion. Do we want to make that just change our regularly scheduled board meeting to that Friday? It may be a little bit longer. Or we can have the regular meeting Thursday and then the special meeting Friday, which would be a little shorter.
Yeah.
So up to
Well,
the
I would say that whoever gets sworn in on the 9th should be part of the reorganization. So that's why we should actually move it.
Okay.
So Trustee Posada, you unmuted.
I didn't want to interrupt you. I was waiting. For you to finish, but
Go ahead. Yeah, so that would be my suggestion, to just move that to the 9th so that we all just have one fell swoop. Historically, we have done that we swear in and we just go into the reorg and the meeting. So it's
Got
not,
it.
not unlike other years.
Okay.
that was going to be my comment, is that's historically how we've done that, is we've had a meeting that was basically a very shortened meeting where we just do the swearing in, which is more ceremonial, and then the reorg, and that's about it.
So that the new, whoever the new trustees are, if there are new trustees, are part of that conversation.
Sounds good to me.
Yes, and typically there has been action in that meeting. I'm thinking back historically, that they would want to be part of. Yeah, that would be the fair thing to have some elected folks part of that. So I'm supportive of moving that.
Okay, any other comments on any of the other dates?
Do we move June 23rd to June 22nd to June 23rd to hit my birthday again?
No, that does not seem to be an appropriate request, but
That's not a
I
good
will
one.
have others entertain that.
Fair.
Okay, seeing that is the one comment.
I like
So
you
if you
guys,
wouldn't,
like balloons, like.
if you wouldn't, any other discussions? You might end before 9 o'clock, y'all.
What? Yes.
Okay,
So
let's go.
moved.
All right, so, well, there is a movement with a suggestion from Vice President Kirby Gonzalez with the agreement to move the 8th to the 9th. Is that correct, Vice President Kirby Gonzalez? Do I have it? I will second that. So roll call vote, Clerk Venegas.
Aye.
Trustee Posadi.
Aye.
Trustee Barnes.
Aye.
Vice President Kirby Gonzalez.
Aye.
Did she say aye?
She did.
I did.
Okay.
Aye.
I can't, it's hard to hear. And I too vote aye. You have your calendar with that one adjustment. Okay, moving on to board and superintendent comments. I believe, board and superintendent comments. I'm hoping to end before 9. That might not be a possibility. I'm going to forego my comments.
No, I'm also foregoing.
Okay,
mine.
go ahead. Superintendent Hildreth.
I'm just saying, thank you to all employees. We officially ended the school year for students and the majority of our staff last Friday. We were all able to join in great celebrations with graduations from River City, Yolo High School, and Washington Middle College. So that just brought, I think, all of us such joy, because that's the goal. Like, that's really the portrait of a graduate in being visible, like seeing those students walk across the stage. So I didn't want to end this week without that acknowledgement. An additional appreciation to our administrators who have participated this week in trainings. So their teachers and their students are gone, but they're already in how do we prepare for next year? And that's just the kind of administrators that we have. So they've engaged in the last 3 days in their own professional learning, where again, they began thinking about the actions for the strategic plan, for the equity audits, and really thinking about ways to support instruction in the classroom. So it's been very fulfilling. And now I want them to get some rest, because they have really been working hard. We've had trainings for teachers as well, provided by staff and level alikes. And we are just so grateful for all that everyone has done to keep our students at the center of everything we do. So thank you to the community, thank you to district staff, and thank you trustees for really being the true champions of youth in Washington Unified. And thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Hildreth, and congratulations on another successful graduation year. Trustee Barnett, comments?
Muted anyway. I was muted anyway, so no, thank you. I'm gonna forgo mine too.
Great. Thank you. Trustee Pizzotti?
Yeah, I'll be quickly brief. I just wanted to congratulate Dr. Hildreth on her first full year in the district, and it's been a wonderful 18 months. So thank you so much. Absolutely loved having you here so far, and really have gotten to enjoy knowing you personally and seeing how you operate. You've been just a wonderful calming effect on me, who's tends to be a little spastic at times. So I do appreciate that. So thank you so much. And I just wanted to say congratulations. Second, congratulations to all our grads. We're done with graduation. That's absolutely my favorite time of year. Getting to meet all the graduates and shake hands with them as they walk across that stage is, just really moves me. So I did want to say congratulations to all of them, and I hope they're enjoying their summer and their next steps. I had a thought and an idea that I just wanted to throw out there, and I don't know, what everybody else would think about this, but I was thinking, since we have 3 student board members, I was wondering if we could have our site administration talk to the student board member that's assigned to them prior to the start of school year, and kind of walk them through, or have at least one of our school board members walk them through what it is a school board meeting is and looks like, to get better participation. And then the other thought about that is, since we do have 3, how about having them all at the board at the same time? So maybe each one will take turns presenting when they do their update, but I would love to see all 3 of them, at board meetings at the same time. I know maybe that's a little too much in terms of schoolwork, but I just wanted to throw it out there, because our student participation on the board I think it's valuable, and I would love to hear more from them. And Tadadley was really good about, sharing his thoughts and feelings, but I'd love to hear about what the other students felt. And so I just want to put it out there.
Great. Clerk Venegas?
No, just gracias.
Okay, thank you. Vice President Kirby Gonzalez?
Okay, I'm sorry, it's not going to be 30 seconds, but I will be brief. I wanted to share the 2x2 update. And so and I know President Wong will jump in with anything that I miss. And so I was the alternate for Trustee Barnes. Yeah, absolutely. And so in the meeting with the city 2x2, they presented about the youth transportation services, which Washington Unified has already shared out as well. And that is that if you live in Bright or Broderick, then you have free via transportation to the rec center. And I think it's really fantastic to have that, especially as it's getting hot, the pool's there, and all the robust programming they have there.
Awesome.
It is a pilot program, so it's good through, I believe, a little over a month, but it really needs to get utilized. We need to make sure it gets out there so that everyone can advocate for extending it beyond the pilot, hopefully. Also within that, then we talked about the city drought policy. We are on stage 2 water shortage as a city. So now we will be, that started on June 10th. So we are moving now to 3-day watering days. It does impact the district as well. And the city works with our maintenance team on that. We're exempt on our irrigation of fields, and we are exempt, as is everyone in the city, on drip irrigation and containers as well. We talked also about how we can share out water conservation with the city, the community as well, to help make sure that they're all better informed of how we can together conserve water. And then we also talked about the summer programming. The city shared a robust level of programs that they are doing, which our district had also supported, and we used COVID money to help fund some of those. People did sign up through the rec center. So they shared the programming they're doing there. They shared the intern programs. They shared volunteer work that students are doing. It was really incredible to hear everything that they went through. I realized that our staff didn't get to share all of our incredible programming. And so after reflection on that, I talked to Dr. Hildreth about maybe staff could write up, because there's so many great things happening here. And I know that was recently shared in this room, if that could just be shared with the city so that they can hear too what we're doing to meet the needs. President Wong talked about saving room and a percentage as well for students that we know have high need to be in a safe space during the school day, and working with outreach specialists and others to do that. And also I was under the impression, I was misinformed thinking Victor Services was only online. They do have their online programs, but it was clarified, thank you, Assistant Superintendent Moisich, that they're also in person on all of our programming, working in person with students who are already on campuses. In addition, they're doing the online for people who are not in those. Also then it was cut short because there was a strategic planning meeting that was backed up exactly to this one. So we talked about in the future, maybe giving more wiggle room to that, but there was not time for the robust discussion with Washington Unified calls for service to West Sac Police Department. So that will be, it sounds like an ongoing conversation for you next time to be talking about that. Although Chief Strange did have a request that we help in the community to share the work that we are doing with the police department as well. And because it's a hard time right now, there's a lot of misinformation sometimes that gets out there, and they're working really hard to connect with our youth and do youth programs and whatnot. So I think that is it for the 2x2. And then I'll just say I came today for needed some last minute COVID testing that I hadn't expected I needed. And it felt so good to say, oh, Washington Unified has that. And we got here right in time. And it was really a gift that we have this still in our school district. So made it really easy for us. And I think it's utilized. I know it's shared on our schedule. But as we came to do COVID testing, which was such a gift, we went by the progressive pride flag that is up in front of district office for the first time.
Oh,
and
cool.
So I just have to say that was really, really, really special. And I hope that we make sure that we do a shout out on that. But seeing that for the first time here just made me really happy. So thank you. Those are my comments.
Great, thank you so much. There's nothing else I want to cover. Again, congratulations to the school community and our board for getting through another full year.
Can I just ask quickly on the ride share for the rec center? I'm trying to find online where, like, if we want to get the word out and pilot that, I don't know the schedule.
We can pull up, I believe Yorgos pulled it up. Like there was a recent communication that I saw that Vice President Kirby Gonzalez. Perhaps we can send that to Trustee Barnes again. There was information sent out on our, I think it was email and Twitter and so if we can, if staff can provide that to Trustee Barnes, that would probably have the most up-to-date information.
Perfect. I have it pulled up right now.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to future board agenda items. First, big one, charter school oversight updates, June 23rd, 2022. Full adoption of the budget, the next June meeting. SIPSA is next on our next June meeting. Safety update in July 2022 and PLA agreements July 2022. Are we missing anything? Are we wanting to add anything?
I think President Wong, to the point that Trustee Pasadi made, I don't know necessarily about 3 board members, but I think having a discussion, maybe it would be worth it about student board members. They can vote as well and have that kind of not celebratory, sorry, I'm in a celebratory mood, but have the, I'm blanking on my words tonight, but they're able to vote though for in the board meetings with us. And I think that I just left a board meeting where a student board member was doing that. They were very engaged. They were voting on the items. They knew the items that night that they wanted to speak to. And this is an opportunity to really elevate them as they're looking to apply for college, if they want to be involved in policy. So I think maybe a conversation would be helpful to have.
So I am wondering if we do a full youth engagement, like a broad, not just them, but a large youth engagement item included, which it would include this.
Sounds good.
Does that make sense? And Clerk Venegas, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I don't know if this is a good question or not, but if they attend a board meeting, does that count as community service?
It could.
Yeah,
that's a lot of hours. Because I would want my community service hours if I was.
Yeah.
Is there something you didn't know that community service hours for Clerk Venegas?
They are serving the community and they are in school. I think. How do we find that out? Who?
So we can, my suggestion would be, we can really have this discussion once the high schools are back in session, because in terms of really, just in my experience of training student board members to really be participatory, is a lot of preparation and walking them through, as you said, the agenda and what that means. And we want to make sure that there is support at each of our high schools, River City, Washington Middle College, and YOLO, where our student board members come from, that they will have that on-site mentor to just help and them be successful. So I would recommend waiting until school starts so that we have time to make sure that there is that connection, and then plan out what that training and engagement process will look like.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. And co-creation with the actual young people instead of us creating it makes a lot of good sense. But I think also a larger youth the bigger youth engagement, I'm still interested in kind of more about.
Right, because that also goes to, we had the largest amount of students who were at the Youth Empowerment Summit. We have a large number of students who are participating in our MLK Freedom Center work, and that's all about engagement and advocacy, and we can add this. And again, I'm just thinking of an operational piece. I want to make sure that they have the support at each site to really do that. So I like the adding youth engagement, and if we could put it as a to be determined in terms of date, that will allow us just time to connect with our school site points of contact.
Vice President Kirby Gonzalez, I think I heard you start to say something.
Yes, thank you. I think that sounds like a good plan. And I just wanted to make sure that no one gets chosen before that happens. So that in the communication, nobody shows up and then says, wait a minute, I didn't want that. So just as you have that alignment talk, because often we have a student board member kind of right away. So.
Right, because then that will also allow, I don't know, for example, what the process is to select student board members. And so if we are looking to elevate and change some of what that is, we want to make sure that students who might not have been interested, they might be interested now. So whatever that process of elections or appointments, again, I don't know what it is for each school. We just want to have time to check with site leaders on that information.
Yeah, and it'd be exciting to, as that last empowerment, right? Like co-creation for our students. Okay, I think that if there's no other things that future board agenda items we have dispensed from our agenda, I don't think we have to vote on this, but we can. Adjournment.
Okay.
Okay. No?
Oh, we might need to just because we're hybrid.
Virtual? Okay, so do I have a motion to adjourn? Trustee Pizzotti moves, I second. It has to be roll call because we're hybrid. Clerk Venegas, up and out of his seat. Vice President Kirby Gonzalez.
Aye, and thank you.
Trustee Barnes.
Aye.
Trustee Pizzotti.
Aye.
And I too vote aye. Thank you so much and have a good evening, y'all.